everyone. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have back on the show Rachel Lang and Tisha Morris. Welcome, ladies.
Hi, thanks for having us back.
Yes, thank you. It's always fun being on your show.
Yeah, so this is going to be double the fun. For the listeners who are on the podcast today, we are also filming this, so you can head on over to the YouTube channel to also see us in action. We look pretty fabulous, if you ask me. But more importantly, I just wanted the content on both locations because I think that this information is really, really important. What we are going to be talking about today is what's going on in the stars as far as 2020. And Tisha and I are going to hopefully be able to brainstorm on some fantastic solutions on what to do about it. And I was just talking to the girls before the show that my first astrologer that I ever started working with, his name was Brady, or Tom Brady, which a lot of people say the football player. No, he was in New Mexico. His son has now taken over his company. His name is Joshua. And it was really kind of surreal for me to have an astrology reading because you guys can see so much in our charts. And there was so much revealed to me. And we had just gotten through 2008. And I was like, okay, when are things going to get back to normal? And he said, this is the new normal. Like we're just climbing now until we get to 2020. And he was the first person that really put 2020 on my radar as far as like this culmination. And kind of the vision that I got was like we're climbing Mount Everest and it's like we finally are almost to the top, and all along the way our poor decisions, the truths are being revealed to us. We're like, oh my God, why did we decide to do this? We're at the point of no return, but now the storm is coming in. So just give us kind of some idea as to what is going on, what we can brace ourselves for, so to speak, as far as what 2020 holds, and if there are particular months that are going to be a little bit more challenging.
Yeah, that's it. This is a great topic because 2020 is a very interesting year astrologically, and I think in many ways we've been preparing for this ever since 2008, 2012, when we had the when Pluto moved into Capricorn, and then there were a series of transits between Pluto, Uranus, and it's been kind of building up. So we've had little previews along the way of what we might expect in 2020. So the big event is happening on January 12th. And it is when the planet Pluto meets up with the planet Saturn, or this planet Saturn actually is the faster moving one. So it's going to conjoin Pluto. That means they're going to be standing right next to each other. And what's interesting about this happens once every 34 years. So it's a pretty big event. It's like a serious event. And it's happening in the sign of Capricorn, which is Saturn's sign. I'm going to kind of break down why this is so important. And
yeah, because I have no idea what you're talking about.
Exactly. Most people don't, so don't worry. I'll break it down. I'll simplify it for you. So Saturn is the planet of authority. It's government, institution, law. It's kind of like it's the planet that's sort of like the planetary police officer. It's the one that wants to make the rules, and if you break the rules, it wants to intervene. But it's also the planet that relates to stable structures. And those kinds of things are like institutions like government, religion, corporation, economic institutions. And Saturn rules the sign of Capricorn, which relates to all of those things too. And Capricorn, and so in this sense, this conjunction is happening in Saturn's sign of Capricorn. Pluto, so these are big themes. Capricorn, those Capricorn themes are up for us. Pluto wants us to tear down what's not working and to rebuild into something new. So we can look at this symbolically and say this is a time of restructuring. This is a time of, identifying where the faults are, where the cracks in those foundations are, where the corruption is, where there are people who need to be punished for things that they've been doing wrong. And we're seeing that a lot. We're seeing a lot of that happening with, with shining a spotlight on corruption within government. I mean, we're in the middle, as we're recording this right now, we're having an impeachment hearing, where we're seeing, some of the corruption within government. We've also seen a big, huge spotlight on Me Too, on people who've taken advantage of women, and so anywhere there is some kind of something hidden, something
bad behavior, kind of
bad behavior.
Yeah.
Saturn and Pluto are coming together and saying, we gotta put an end to this, and we gotta build something new. And what's interesting is that we're also seeing, structures and boundaries with countries. Talks about walls, talks about keeping refugees out. So these are also big themes. It's protection, boundary, structure, stability, corporation, economic, like all of these patriarchal institutions are, they're all shaken up and redefined.
And
wow.
So if for those listening, if you just were to rewind everything she just said and apply that to your personal life, your world, all that applies in your own world. Anything that's not working, anything that's anything that needs restructuring, anything that's boundaries that you need to put into place, everything she just said, just think of it in the context of your own life, and it's just as applicable.
Yeah, and actually to that point, I think, one thing that I'm seeing in my practice right now is so many of my clients are reshaping their family structures to where there's, so family can be an institution just like religion or just like government, because our concept of family and our concept of concept of community, our concept of family are all intertwined with this patriarchal model that we've all been exposed to, we've all been living within for thousands and thousands of years.
Even the institution of marriage, where the was grounded on patriarchy, and how that's shifting in modern day relationships, as well as all.
I think it's so well needed, though. I mean, this theme of just really, to me, the vision that I get is that like things are literally from the inside out, just like the whole paradigm is shifting, like everything is blowing up from the inside out, and really getting rid of all of those structures and the meritocracy that's been set up by people that maybe less than 1%, that doesn't really apply to the majority. And a lot of us, I know that, and I know, Tisha, we've talked about this in the past as far as just all the various things that we've gotten into, and doing the interior design and landing on Feng Shui, but this idea of not wanting to work in corporate, like I lasted for a hot minute in structure, and very quickly went into working for myself because I needed the freedom. And I swear to God, every job I ever had, I got fired from. And it wasn't because I was for bad behavior. I just was terrible. I just couldn't, it just seemed like I got fired from every single job I ever had. And the only job that I've ever kept is my own. But I just read this great book called The Burnout Generation, and everything from pastors to millennials to moms. I mean, you across the board, people who are returning, from Iraq and who have been in war and who are in the military. It seems like everybody is experiencing burnout, and it's because of this system. It's like this box has been built, and we've been all trying to stuff ourselves into it and fit into it, and we don't. It's not really honoring who we are on a unique level. So as we know, this is coming, this is happening next month. So how do we gently and gracefully start preparing for this? Like, Tisha, are there some things that we could start doing in our homes to start preparing our environments? And then how do we calibrate ourselves to prepare for this? Because, you know, I'm pretty sensitive to energy, and I would argue that a lot of people that listen to this show are likely empaths on some level. And I mean, every time the moon changes, I'm like vibrating at different levels, and like I just feel things. And this sounds like something where I'm just gonna like not want to get out of bed.
Oh,
Well, we've been building up to it. It's
Yeah.
not, I mean, the transit that they slowly get, so we've been calibrating for this, and then everyone, I mean, it's been a tough fall for summer and
Holy
fall.
Christ.
For everyone. So we've already been seeing the build up to this, and it's all about, who are you going to take with you to this new world? And I actually think that this is actually what it's leading to, is kind of a new world, breaking down the old, what Rach was saying, the old structures or anything that was no longer working. And so that could be people in your life, it could be jobs, it could be places. There's a lot of people have moved, and the phrase that I've been hearing in my head, I know, Amanda, you're in Nashville. I used to live in Nashville, and on the weather forecast, it was always like, get in your safe place during the tornado season. And so that's what I've been hearing, get in your safe place. And what that means is a home, a sense of home, whatever that means for you, and with the people that you want to be, in air quotes, home with. Because it's a little bit of a hunkering downtime is my sense, not in a scare way, but it could, there could be a lot of volatility.
I would say that there's a bright spot.
Are we talking about bright spots yet?
Already?
We're only a couple of minutes in here. I don't know if we're ready for the positivity.
So I would also say that one thing that the great thing about astrology is we see these cycles that are mapped down, and so one follows another. And there's a cycle that's coming on the heels of this. So January is going to be tough. I mean, it's going to be not tough, but it's going to be a time of change, and a time where there's a lot of, it's like there's a lot of, there are catalysts in your personal life for change and catalysts societally for change. And we could see a kind of a shakeup in a lot of ways. We could see this with the economy. We could see this with relationships. And so when I look for like where are the bright spots, and where are we moving toward? There are 3 times this year when Jupiter and Pluto will form conjunctions, and this happens once every 13 years.
Oh,
and
wow.
Yeah. So it's a really, I mean, I kind of look at this as the fireworks display, kind of punctuating and allowing us to celebrate all the changes that are happening after the Pluto-Saturn conjunction. Because Jupiter, so Saturn is law. It's the laws. It is authority. It is government, institutions. It's also limitations, and it's more importantly our perceived limitations. So those collective beliefs, those collective ideas that keep us stuck in a rut, that keep us from really progressing or from moving forward, or that stall or delay that process of growth, innovation, invention, and those kinds of things. Jupiter is kind of like as different as you can get energetically from Saturn.
It's like Santa Claus.
It is. It's like Santa Claus. But it's the biggest planet in our solar system. It is, just a really bright luminary, bright star in the sky, and it's all about expansion, belief, faith, opportunity, abundance, new beginning. And so when Jupiter and Pluto come together, they offer tremendous growth opportunities economically. So if you suffered from any kind of shakeup in your financial life personally in January, or maybe from October to January, if you had some kind of challenges, these times when Jupiter and Pluto come together could be times when you're building things back up. There are also times when we could have inventions coming in, or new ideas, or people coming in from future generations This is happening in the sign of, well, it's happening in Capricorn, but and so there are opportunities within those institutions that we're talking about, even your family institution, to create some new ways of being. So this is going to happen 3 times. And the first one is April 4th. So not too far after that January. Then the second one is June 30th. And the third one is November 12th. And so this is.
So do they just last one day, or is it like overarching, or how long does Santa Claus stay?
It we'll notice that for about 2 or 3 weeks around those times, but those are the times when it's exact. And so that's often when an aspect between 2 planets or a transit perfects, when it comes to that exact degree, then that's often when we feel it the strongest. But there's kind of an energy of that transit that lasts for several weeks on either side of that conjunction.
So I have a question. You've talked about, I always see Saturn as restriction. Like that's always the word that I hear, that I associate with Saturn. But I'm a Scorpio, and so I'm all about regeneration, death, rebirth. Like I just do this shit all the time. Like I am built for this.
Yeah, you are.
But I feel like I've mastered this in a lot of ways. Like everything you're telling me, I'm like, oh, great. I'm going to have to hunker down, whatever. But like, I'm built for this. But I know that there are signs, like I think of my mother, like I'm wondering if like a Taurus, who's an earth, who's very stable and doesn't like change. And, I'm wondering how a sign that is not built for change and death and rebirth and regeneration, what is the best way for them? Maybe let us know what those signs are that may be a little bit more challenged. Okay. And Tisha, maybe just give them a little extra boost on some things that they can do for their environment, because, I think of my mom and like, this is the shit that just knocks her down because she hates change.
Well, not to go on the decluttering path, but I'm gonna have to go there because honestly, it is the best, easiest way to get comfortable with change. As you let things go, you're adapting to a lighter energy, and that's really what we're talking about on the Saturn-Pluto conjunction that's coming up, is a major decluttering of anything that's no longer working. That's what decluttering is. And so if you go ahead and start doing that in the space that you actually have control over, there's nothing else in the world you have control over except for your space as much as you can. And so taking autonomy over your space, which also includes your mind and body. Our mind, body, and home is the only thing we have control over, maybe your car on a good day. And so making the most of those as you can. So decluttering, practicing what nature and what the astrology is asking us to do for ourselves. And then I also think this is a time when for us spiritual people to really get our bag of spiritual tools out. Mm-hmm. And I mean, this is what we've all been, these are the times in which we do meditation and yoga and all these other modalities, is tools to deal with change and changing times like this.
I'm curious, what do you say, again, being that I'm a Scorpio, like I have this, and I'm a wood element, so I'm all about action. Like I move quickly and I make very rash decisions, and sometimes I regret them, but for the most part I'm like, oh well. But I know that there are some people that are out there that like, they hear that word decluttering and they hear this idea of, oh my God, like all this change is coming, and like they're panicking. So do you have any tips for someone who is just like paralyzed by the idea of, having to declutter? Is there like a good place to start, or is there a methodology that's like step 1, do this to get them started?
Yeah, great question, because it can be overwhelming. And so the best place to start is where it doesn't feel overwhelming, where it feels easy. Really the only overwhelming parts are the parts that it could be one emotional item that's actually the cog in the whole wheel. And so if you just try to work with the easy stuff first, get some energy moving, things that you don't really have, that don't have an emotional pull for you, let those go to the side for now. But once you start letting things go and feeling lighter and getting energy moving, then you'll be more in a space to deal with the more difficult things at a time. And also reaching out for help. I mean, professional organizers, friends, family members. It doesn't have to be a lone wolf task.
Well, hopefully the energy too. I know that I'm very, very in tune with astrology. I say this all the time, where I think I'm being revolutionary. I think like I'm doing these amazing things and coming up with these incredible ideas. And like I just did this, I completely redid my whole company, and like I'm changing everything, and I'm decluttering my company. Like I'm simplifying. And like, I think I'm coming up with this, and it's like, nope, it's in the stars. It's like, it's everything that's going on. I didn't come up with anything. So I feel like I'm very much in tune with that without really realizing why I'm doing it. But I do know that there are some signs that don't do that, and they've got their feet in the ground and they're like, nope, I don't want to do this. So Rachel, what are some ways, for signs that aren't built for this? What are some ways for them to lean into this and just like say, hey, it's coming. You're going to have to do it.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Amanda, I think one of the great things about astrology is, and you articulated it so beautifully, is that we're feeling this energy. Even those of us who don't think of ourselves as being sensitive are vibing with this energy. So during a Mercury retrograde, even if you don't know anything about astrology, you might have issues with your computer, or you might have communication challenges, or you might go through your closet and want to just clear out all the clothes that you don't wear anymore. So there's something within us, like we are made of the same substances as the stars. We have all of this energy within ourselves. And so even those fixed signs, and Scorpio is a fixed sign. You're a rare Scorpio who welcomes and embraces change. But our fixed signs are Taurus, Scorpio, Leo, and Aquarius. And fixed signs they're the ones that hunker down. They're the ones that stay committed. They're the ones that are tried and true, that don't give up. And they can also be the ones who are the most resistant to change, where they're like, they make change very gradually. They make change very consciously. And so even those signs and those people born under those signs are going to feel something shifting within them that's going to lead to external change. Now, what can you do to welcome this? What can you do to embrace this? I think just give yourself permission to do it incrementally, to know that you can have awareness without dropping a bomb. And I see this often with my clients who feel like they need to leave a relationship, or they've outgrown a relationship. And sometimes they can be so resistant to even just having that awareness that their physical bodies get sick.
Yep.
And it forces them to stand still, stop, pay attention, and say, what's really going on? And then that awareness opens up, and we always feel like we have to do something. We have to act on behalf of whatever awareness we're receiving, or whatever insights are coming up, or whatever knowledge is coming to light. And we don't always have to take immediate action. Sometimes the best thing to do is just to sit still and to wait, and to talk it through with someone that you trust. See a therapist, talk to an astrologer, talk to a healer, navigate that transition. So I think just being comfortable with sitting in that uncomfortable place of knowing you need to make a change and not knowing how to do that or what steps to take is the first step.
Yeah, and I really love the idea, Tisha, that you said, just doing yoga and meditation and doing more of that inner work. I think that even if your external world is like purely chaotic and dramatic and freaking out, doing everything that you can to just try to, calibrate yourself and center yourself to the best of your ability.
Yes, absolutely. And setting those spaces in your house up for that to be, build it and you will come, whether it's meditation or whatever.
What do you think about maybe doing an altar? Do you think that building a sacred area in your home. I have altars all over my house. Like I have them in my bathroom and at my entryway, and I have them everywhere. But I really think that there's something to be said about a space that you set up that you can visit to. It's almost like Pavlov's dogs, where like you walk up to it and you drop in. Like you walk up to it and you know, like, this is where I set clear intentions. This is where I clear my brain. This is where I set forth the prayers and goals that I have. I mean, what do you think about, that might be a good place to start as well.
Yeah. And it's energy. So there's you creating that energy in that space. Whereas the energy in your kitchen is about cooking, where the energy in your meditation or spiritual practice place will build more on that. That's why you can drop in more easier in the same space. So to your point, I highly recommend that. Yeah,
I think that's great. So after we get through the shit show in January,
Can I add one more thing to January?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's what else is kind of cool about this is that Ceres, which is this little dwarf planet, who's associated with agriculture and motherhood and the divine feminine, is right there in that group too. And I think it's kind of like, and then the North Node's in Cancer, which relates to motherhood, nurturing, taking care of children, protecting those who don't have voices. And so I think this is actually a real opportunity for us in our own personal lives to really be united. Like part of the hunkering down that you were talking about and the protection and the preparedness is actually strengthening family bonds and strengthening relationships and building community and focusing on protecting the earth, focusing on protecting children. And if we can turn our attention toward those kinds of things, then it's like we're moving toward what we're reshaping and what we're recreating, or how we're restructuring, and we can move away from some of those faulty structures that are going to crumble down under that conjunction.
Which is so needed, because part of the problem with patriarchy is this idea of separateness. We're an island, we do it on our own, and there is no sense of self and community. So like Tisha, when you said, well, if you're having problems with clutter, reach out to someone, and there's probably a lot of people like, oh, I can't ask for help. And that's the point, right? We're supposed to have community. We're supposed to be able to lean on each other. We're supposed to ask for help. So that's fantastic, because maybe it will help encourage people to feel safe around that idea.
Yeah. And this is something that's going to be a real theme when we get into December. In December, we have a really exciting, so this is that we're talking about the end, next December. So the end, so a year from now. We come out of this Capricorn period, which is all that we've been talking about, and we move into Aquarius. So Jupiter and Saturn are going to have a conjunction in the sign of Aquarius. And so Aquarius is all about,
this is where
community.
The bright spot
Yeah, this is like, these are some more of the bright spots. Like these are
okay. We just have a year. We just got to get through the year.
Well, and I think like throughout this year, there are some really cool things that are happening that are shifted, that are like helping. It's like there are lots of bright spots throughout the year. There's a lot of innovation. There's a lot of like technological advancement. There's kind of like a revolution that we're going to see that has remnants of what we saw in 2012 and through 2015, where people are going to be coming together in really innovative, interesting, dynamic, powerful ways. And Aquarius is all about community, and it's also kind of about the self. And so I think we're going to see a lot more communities rising to take care of those who have needs.
Rachel's the only person I know who can make a revolution sound happy,
positive, and joy-filled. The whole world is just going to be up in uproar, but it's going to be amazing.
Right. Well, I'm thinking about like the times when I've gone to like rallies, or when I've gone to the Women's March. I've had so much fun. Oh my God. it's
Mind you, this is all leading up to the election.
Yeah, well, yes, we're going to talk about that too.
I'm not sure how rosy this revolution is going to be.
I mean, as a whole, though, if we're looking at the whole year, I mean, I know that this idea of Saturn and Capricorn, with this idea of the paradigm really being blown up and the old ways going away. If you ask me, I mean, we've really been delving into this for the last 6 to 8 years. I mean, this has been building.
Right.
So it really is the point of no return. We've already been experiencing it. And I have felt like it could be pure perception, but I was just talking about this on the show a couple weeks ago, where I feel like when I was in high school and in college and stuff, it's like life was normal. And I feel like now we're on fast forward. Like everything's going very rapidly and things have really sped up. But I feel like it's like I said a while ago, the idea of we're building up, we're climbing up Mount Everest, and, you know, we're realizing the truths, we're realizing the bad decisions that we've made. And it's like the storm is brewing and the storm is coming, but the sun is coming right behind it. Like tomorrow's a new day. So I think a lot of the change and the shift and the uproar, it's almost like we have to go through it so that the sun can emerge the next day. Like I feel like there's a lot of really good positive things. The uproar is going to be a shit show, but the positive stuff that's going to come out of it, I think we're going to look back and go, okay, that was worth going through that.
Yeah, I think that's indicative, or that's a characteristic of every single Pluto transit and every single Saturn transit. In fact, I always tell my clients who are going through difficult Saturn transits, which are like those Saturn opposite Sun, or, you know, transiting Saturn opposite your natal Sun, or Saturn Moon, like some of those more challenging Saturn transits. I always say Saturn wants you to have what you're here to do. It wants you to be fulfilled, but it'll test you along the way. It's kind of like, you know, the teacher that gives you pop quizzes so that you really get the information, so that you really learn the lessons, and that you get the A, and then you go on to be successful. So Saturn is a really helpful planet, even though it does kind of feel challenging at times. And Pluto is you know, it wants your evolution. It wants our evolution as a human, you know, race. It wants your evolution personally. And so we can look at this as at the end of any Pluto transit, you look back and you say, I wouldn't change that for the world. It was, you know, not the easiest time, but look at how much you've grown. And so I think we're all going to be able to look back at that, hopefully in November of this year, and say, wow, we learned so much. Look at where we are now. We're in a very different place.
Yeah, I think, you know, really what we're saying, all three of us are saying, is not really attaching a good or bad label on any of it. And it really is whatever. I mean, you could look at it in a rosy way of like, revolution is for, I mean, in the end of, even while it's happening, wow, this is really beautiful, change is happening. While you could also be in a lot of pain for personal, you know, whatever's going on in your personal life during that time. Both dimensions exist, and you can choose whichever one you want to look at any time, or both at the same time, for that matter. There's a spectrum of emotions, but I think not attaching good and bad and to the upcoming times that we live in, so I think that is another kind of spiritual tool approach as well.
Yeah, really.
I think a lot of people are really waking up. Like, I think back to when I was in college, and I have this funny story about, you know, buying my first deck of tarot cards. We didn't have Amazon. So I had to go to a Borders bookstore, and it was a friggin' nightmare. Like, it was so embarrassing, and 4 people got involved. They were talking about it over the intercom. It was so embarrassing. And nowadays, it doesn't matter what your fetish is, what your kink is. Like, you go online and you can get it, and it just comes to your door.
Yeah.
And I think that what's so great about the time that we're in is that so many people are awakening at this rapid pace. conversations that I now have that, 20 years ago I would have held back or not really spoken fully my truth. I just put it out there now. And it could just be me where I'm at, like I'm at, I don't care anymore. But I do feel like it's a lot more open-minded, and there's a lot more openness, and more people are awakening at this rapid rate. And I feel like it's a requirement that we go through these types of revolutions, because those type of awakenings happen at a rapid or more rapid pace. And I feel like these types of events are what force us to look at the other side of the coin. So I went through a huge Saturn return, and, I went through a divorce, and I went through a massive health scare, and my whole life was turned upside down. I lost my business, like all of these things. It was just boom, boom, boom. I was like, oh my God, how much more can I take? But now looking back, I'm like, oh my God, I totally would do that again. Yeah. Like, cause it forced me to wake up. It like, I became a vegetarian. I got into yoga. I started doing meditation. I embraced my Feng Shui. Like I started this podcast. Like, so much was a result of that chaos. Mm-hmm. So I feel like everything that you're saying January is going to be, while it's going to be uncomfortable, it's also going to force us to really show up as our best selves. It's really going to portray the optimal soul at the soul level person that we are. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of good can come from that, especially if we're talking about, the Me Too movement and the things that are going on in the political arena, and, the college admission thing. I mean, we could just go on and on and on with all the crap that's been exposed. And like, it's like, if you have the awareness, you're like, oh yeah, I mean, that's what this time is all about.
Yeah. And even, I mean, we can look back and the Pluto Capricorn cycle that's been going on since 2008 has been breaking down corruption in everything. I mean, we had the 99% movement. We had we had the whole bank crisis. We had, I mean, everywhere, every institution has had a spotlight put on corruption, on injustice, on anything that needed to come into the light. So I think it's going to be it's going to result in positive change.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning from an astrological perspective that Pluto's been in Capricorn for, when did it enter? 2008, when we had the crisis, and it stays for 20 something years. Yeah. 20, and so we're just kind of right past the midpoint of Pluto and Capricorn in this long cycle of breaking down structure or institutions. And then so during its transgression through Capricorn, it's going to be meeting up with its friend Saturn, or not friend, enemy Saturn. And that's what's coming up. And then Jupiter's going to also be in the conversation too. But so this is like Saturn, like this has been Pluto's work for a long time and will continue. It's just going to be meeting up with Saturn for the conversation to get even more interesting.
Mm-hmm. It's like really taking out the trash.
Yeah. Here's the cool thing though. Here's the cool thing. So again, Saturn loves, it's like the police officer who wants to protect your home, or wants to take you off the streets if you've been drunk driving. If you have been working hard, if you have been doing your own personal growth, your own personal development, if you have been learning your lessons, mastering them, if you've been in integrity, if you've been building a business, if you've been doing anything that's putting your entire heart into it, Saturn says, here's the reward. Here's the gift that comes from being the lone woman buying the tarot card deck. Saturn says, here you go, Amanda, you've been really committed. Here's another level of success for your show. And actually I think a lot of Capricorns, or people who are born with Saturn and Capricorn, you are going through your Saturn return right now. This is a time when you got to stay committed. You got to stay in it and don't give up. It's not a time for just to discard something that you really, really like, that you're passionate about, to follow someone else's dream for you or someone else's idea. It's a time of seeing reward for the ambitions that you've had, if they've been if they've been, if they've been in the best.
Authentic and true.
Yeah, exactly. Not like if your ambition is killing a bunch of people, then Saturn's like, no.
Well, the best thing is too, like with the Me Too movement, the thing that cracks me up is the men are always like, well, this is the way it's always been done. This is the way it's always been. And it's like, well, that's why it's being torn up.
Yeah.
Remember, so this Pluto transit with Pluto is happening in each of our personal charts as well. Somewhere in your natal chart, depending on what house it's hitting in your personal chart, is where you'll see everything we've been talking about highlighted in your own chart. So
and I don't know where it's at, but Pluto is one of my main planets. It's like in the 3rd or 4th house. Pluto, Neptune, and Venus are my 3 main planets. So it's curious that you're talking so much about Pluto. I'm like,
Yeah, and being a Scorpio too, it's the planet, it's the modern planet associated with your sign. Even though it's traditionally ruled by Mars, Pluto's got a close association with Scorpio. So yeah.
Well, I just know I'm always in the clouds, so it's like Pluto and Neptune. I'm just like, woo, which is great. But as the year progresses, and once we get through January, and we've got some fruits of our labor coming up in April and June, and I think you said November. What about some of those other months? I mean, is January the big one to get through, or is this kind of the theme that's giving us a preview of how the energy is going to unfold over the course of 2020?
I think it is giving us the theme it's the big event of 2020. And so I think
about the eclipses.
Yeah, I think a lot of the transits the rest of the year will involve Saturn, will involve Pluto. The big outer planet transits are involving those 3. So anytime I'm looking at what are the big ideas for the year, I'm looking at where the north nodes are, or the nodal axis is. So the north node and the south node are always opposite points of one another. And the north node is sort of like where we're focusing on and where our attention is going, and really what we need to be paying attention to. And the south node is what's breaking down what is hang on one second.
Hi, kitty.
She's like, I think I need to be part of this conversation. But the south node is like what we're needing to revisit, what we're needing to look at, maybe what's not necessarily in our focal point. For this year, for 2019, the north node has been in Cancer, which is home, which is family, which is our domestic affairs politically. It is mothering its children. It's real estate, those kinds of things. And it's moving. So the north node is still going to be in Cancer, which is our big focal point where we're aiming our attention. And the tension between Cancer and Capricorn, which we've talked a lot about, is still up for us. That all starts to shift in May. And in May, the north node changes to Gemini, and we have the south node in Sagittarius. And so this is a big moment for us in the year where the energy definitely changes. Gemini is it's about the details in life. It's about communication. It's about news. And I think, with the whole talk of fake news and that whole concept and the election year coming up, I think we could just be more and more fine-tuned in how we deliver information, how we receive information, and also the kinds of information that we're exposed to. It's also a time of Sagittarius relates to religion, it relates to philosophy, faith. And so I think that we could see a lot of our collective ideas shifting as this transit begins. And this will be here for about 18 months. So the nodes change every 18 months or so.
Wow.
Yeah.
So as we shift into the fall, We've got some big revolution happening. I mean, shifts in religion and government and news and things like that can be huge,
Yeah.
because we know there's a lot of corruption there. June is going to be positive because Jupiter's coming in. But what can we expect in the fall? I mean, that's really going to be the culmination, where the energy to me always feels incredibly intense before an election. And the last election, I mean, if that's any testament to what this election is going to be like, I mean, I just feel like it's going to be off the charts this time. So astrologically, what do we have showing up like in September, October, and in those beginning weeks of November when we're heading into that election?
Yeah, great question. So it's an interesting time, because what we have in September, from September to November, Mars is going to be retrograde. So it's going to be like now Mars relates to conflict. It relates to ego, competition, and also like passion and energy and all that sort of physical expression of yourself. War too, it can be.
And wasn't Mars retrograde in the summer of 2018?
Oh, you know what? I don't remember. I'd have to go back and look.
I think it was. So if y'all are listening and you're wondering what the hell Mars in retrograde means, just rewind back in your head what your summer of 2018 was like, because mine was a shit show.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think so. Now, I would say we also have Venus retrograde. This happens. Mars retrograde happens every 2 years. Venus retrograde happens every 18 months. And Venus is going to be retrograde from May 12th to June 24th. And with these two, and so first of all, if you have a wedding, like if you're wanting to get married, I would kind of avoid that Venus retrograde time. Like, this is not the best time for a wedding. If you already have your wedding planned, then it's okay. Like, it's okay. But if you're planning a wedding, like, this is not the best time. But because we have, Venus retrograde and then Mars retrograde, our relationships, and I think we could even look at like our politically, the election, the competition of that election, like all of this could kind of ugly,
Yeah.
Or we could be backtracking and digging things out from the past and bringing them up to where it's, like, it's just kind of creating some more stress, some more struggle, some more conflict in our political conversations.
But the good news is December's positive, right?
Yes. Yeah.
The light of Aquarius comes back.
So we need to put our periscopes in and just like, okay, we can get through this. We just got to get through December.
Oh, I'm going to give you a couple lucky days. So these are the days when Venus is trine Jupiter. And this is going to happen on March 27th and October 19th. So October 19th is right in the middle of this. This is like these are bright spots in our year. And I think that they're also with the nodal axis moving into Gemini and Sagittarius, it's a little bit easier actually than Cancer and Capricorn. It's kind of whereas Cancer and Capricorn are both cardinal signs. They're all about taking action, making things happen, taking initiative. And that can make for a lot of events, a lot of activities. But Gemini and Sagittarius are mutable signs. So it's a lot of like kind of going with the flow. It's a little bit more flexible.
So Tisha?
I was just going to make a prediction.
What's your prediction?
Regarding the election.
Okay.
Is that there's no point in trying to think of what's going to be happening in November until we get past the Saturn-Pluto conjunction early in the winter. Like, I think we're in a very different world in late winter, early spring, to where it's going to be hard to make any kind of prediction of what November is going to be like until we're through.
I'm more concerned about what it's going to feel like. Like, I feel everything, and like to me, pretty much like starting 2015 to now, it's just been intense. like the energy has just been insane, and like the eclipses and all of the explosions of energy and the solar storms and all this stuff that's been going on. I like my poor energetic system. Like I'm noticing that my environment is more important to me than it's ever been before. And it's always been important, but now it's like off the charts because I do need alone time. I do need quiet time. I need that time to really recalibrate and cultivate my energy system because it's so much. And I feel like as I become more spiritually awakened and I do more of the energy and spiritual work, the more sensitive I am to it all. And so I'm finding that I am wanting to hibernate and become a lot more introverted just to manage it all. So but I'm curious, like, as we're, going through this year of it sounds like it for me, I'm just thinking, oh, this sounds like it's going to feel like a lot. Like this sounds
Yeah.
like a lot of energy.
I think what you're saying and what you're doing for yourself, the self-care measures that you're doing for yourself is a great great thing for all of us to hear. That's really what I think you're doing it the right way, the best right way there is just being mindful of what you need, and taking baths at night, or doing self-care things because of the energy. I mean, we basically, what's happening in the big picture of everything we're saying, I mean, we're going through a massive upgrade, and ascension, if you want to use spiritual terms. And it is a recalibration of our energy system. And so it is a lot of energy. And so taking whatever you need self-care wise for your energy system, I think is so important, and it'll become more and more and more.
Mm-hmm. But also service is important too. So self-care, priority number one. And I think health too, like making sure that you're taking care of your health, because of all the energetic shifts. And like you're saying, the upgrade and ascension, sometimes that can make our physical bodies more sensitive to environmental toxins, to stress. But I think anything that we can do to get out of ourselves too, and volunteer or mentor or give back, helps keep our egos evolving. Yeah. As our souls are pushing us to evolve.
Well, and I think, Tisha, you did a newsletter, I think in April, and you were talking about how you were just really feeling a lot of the energy. And so you were pulling back on social media. And I was doing exactly the same thing. I just didn't announce it. But, probably energetically, we were really tapped in and tuned into that. And that's, and then Ruby Warrington also did the same thing. She went on a sabbatical. She's the author of The Numinous, which is a astrology and tarot card blog. But I think a lot of us were feeling the intensity over the summer of 2019. And so a lot of us pulled back on social media because I don't think that a lot of us see that as self-care. But in reality, if you're on all the time and you're busy all the time, and we're getting into this frenetic world where we never shut off. It's like we feel guilty if we don't answer that email at 8:00 at night, when in actuality, you should be off. And so I think that was such a great thing to do as a self-care practice, is to say, you know what, I'm just taking a moment. And I did the same thing. I was like, oh my God, Tisha's doing the same thing I'm doing.
You too are so alive.
But do you know what's so amazing about that is, like, yeah, you're right. And I publicly said, not much is going on. And I like it that way. And I created space. And that's when, Kelly and Ryan, what's her name? Kelly and Ryan show called me. And next thing I know, I'm on national television. So it's like, we're as entrepreneurs or business people, we're afraid if we take a step back and be out of the spotlight for a second, but in fact, we create that space. And self-care allows you, the more you take care of yourself, then your light is brighter, and you can be seen, actually, even if you're not really being seen in what we think of as social media. So,
but you're operating from a full cup.
Exactly.
And the thing is that I think that raises your vibration, like you're talking about. You become more of a beacon. And I think that to the detriment, I think a lot of millennials, they've been raised on technology. And so they don't have an understanding that, you don't have to be on all the time. You don't have to be tethered to your phone and your technology all the time. Us old folks were like, remember the day when we didn't have cell phones, I remember going to college and like I would study all the time, but when I was, my semester was over, like it would be a break and like, it would be playtime. And like we actually had a much more balanced life than we do now. And a lot of people feel guilty if they're not answering emails at home, if they're not taking care of things, if they're not working on projects. And it's like they're always on. And it's like they're not honoring a hibernation season to regroup. And you have to get those creative ideas, to recharge, to recalibrate, and be the beacon so that Ryan and Kelly can call you,
Yeah.
which is amazing. So it's kind of up in the air what is going to happen until we get through this transit. But by the time we hit December, is it going to be a little bit softer? Are we going into a 2021 that's going to be like maybe hopefully unicorns and pixie dust and a little bit softer?
100%. Yeah, I think that after January, I think we're going to need about 6 months. Like they're usually between eclipses. So the January eclipses are followed by the June eclipses, and there's one in July too. And I think that 6 month period is going to be somewhat of a time of reconstruction, reevaluation. It's going to be kind of the more intense period of the year. And then after that, I think things do get a little bit better, even though it is an election and that's kind of a crazy time anyway. But I think that after that January conjunction, there will be a significant shift, and then we'll all just be sort of figuring out how to adjust to that, what we need to do as a result of it. And so I do think that the end of the year closes on a brighter note.
Which is fantastic. So it sounds like what we need to do is just be prepared that the energy is going to be intense, which is okay. I mean, I think that, going through it is not going to be fun, but I think once we get to the other side of it, we're going to be like, thank God that's over. Because, I think we learned a lot from the '08 crash. It was shitty. And a lot of people were drastically affected, but a lot of things changed for the better because of that, horrible event of time. So I think that a lot can be gleaned from those more revolutionary upheavals in our lives. But I think that for myself, when I go through those like the eclipse season this year was in 2019 was just intense. And I have to say, one of the things that has really worked for me is to get out in nature, to go out on the trails, to put my feet in the grass, to do yoga. Sometimes I really treat yoga like crack. Like if I were a drug addict, it would be yoga. Like I just go to classes because the breath work really helps calibrate my energy system. Sleeping, I think a lot of people think, oh, well, I can totally function on 4 or 5 hours of sleep. And I disagree. I think you need a solid 8 hours for self-care, to show up and to be your best self and to drink lots of water and to eat organic food and just, all of the things that you can possibly do to make yourself feel better. And I feel like if you get your environment and yourself up to par, you're better prepared to handle the intensity of the energies that are coming in, and it's not quite so shocking. And it's not so disruptive.
Mm-hmm.
Very well said.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I want to thank you ladies for coming on the show today. My hope was really that we could just talk about the year and let people know kind of what to expect. I sure feel better. I think that like Tisha said, I think that the best thing that you can really do is just control the things that you can control, which are you and your environment. As long as it's not a retrograde, you can control your car. So, if people are interested in working with you or, want to know how this is going to personally affect them, and ways that they can set up their environments to best serve them during these times, where can they find you? And do you have any workshops or anything that's coming out in this year?
Okay, tishamorris.com. And I am actually going back to 1440 and teaching a workshop Memorial Day weekend. I know that seems forever from now. By then, the North Node will be in Gemini, and everyone's going to want to get in their car and travel. So come to Northern California. And then I don't have any workshops yet planned. I'm actually creating a lot of new content and actually focusing on helping authors and writers publish books and getting that going. Again, also in line with North Node moving into Gemini. So yeah, tishamorris.com. I have tons of free content on that site. And of course, my books are on Amazon, just Google Tisha Morris. And anything you want to know about spaces and your home and decluttering, you can find there.
Yeah. And I am at rachelllangastrologer.com. And you can read horoscopes there, and I have several posts about some of the astrological happenings that are happening right now, and I post regularly there. In February, I'm going to be offering a Astrology 101 class, which is just a basic class to get you started. And then I'm also starting astrology mentoring group, and it is basically just we meet a couple times a month and we talk about specific topics. If you're just learning astrology, if you've got a background in astrology and you know a lot, these are times when we get together online and just share ideas, share charts, kind of geek out together. And so that's going to be starting in February as well. And then I'll also be offering some classes, some advanced classes in the spring, including an asteroids class.
Fun. Yeah. And I'll mention all of this stuff will also be on the show notes on our website. So anything that we mentioned today, any of the websites, books, anything like that, you can always go over to my website, which is interiorvibes.com, and you can find all of that information so that you have all the links and don't have to search for it as well. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.